Good morning. This is Annie Fan, Chicago Title. I'm the vice chair for the affiliate. Today we have the home inspection panel. We have three wonderful, awesome home inspection specialists. And first we have Horacio Garfield from BPG Inspection. And second, we have Bill Abalos from Inspection Pro. The third one is Robert Thurman from California Gold Coast Home and Commercial Inspection. So we're gonna go around and ask questions. The panelist is gonna answer. So the first one's gonna go to Horacio. First question. What are the most common types of foundations in Southern California?
Hi, everybody. My name is Horatio. I'm with BPG Inspections. Just a little background on me. I'm a graduate of Cal Poly Pomona with a degree in civil engineering, and I did land development, and I became a professional engineer. So my specialty is actually structures. I do know a little bit about foundation. Basically, the most common foundations that you find here in Southern California is either a slab foundation or a raised foundation. In those cases where the home is sitting directly on the ground, obviously with a slab foundation made out of concrete, or a raised foundation, typically made out of concrete on newer homes, but older homes are sometimes made out of clay brick. Okay, so that would be a raised foundation.
Awesome. So the second question is for Robert. What should I expect from my inspector?
What you should expect from your inspector is to be on time. If they're a little late, as long as they call you and tell you they're coming, it's okay. The other thing is the overall, what to expect is to have a successful a relationship with your client and you, because you spend a lot of time with with your clients. So to have a good communication with your clients and be able to help bring everything to a close, so you're going to have a nice smooth transaction. I don't spend a lot of time talking about unnecessary things to tell you real basic information, and just usually like smoke detectors, gas valves, and the things that need to be repaired. So yes, just a matter of taking care of a few minor details and keeping in mind that the client relationship with you is very important.
Thank you, Robert. Here's a question for Bill. What is the difference between the appraiser inspection and regular home inspection?
Okay. Good morning. Okay, can you guys hear me out there? Okay, so I'm a licensed real estate appraiser in addition to being a home inspector. So I can tell you the difference is the appraiser goes out there, they're inspecting the property for the condition in regards to value. Okay, they're pretty much the eyes and ears of the bank. So they're going to go out there, look at the condition of the property. They're not really there to advise the home buyer about the condition. That's what the home inspection company does. So the appraiser will go out there, inspect the property, check out the condition of it, write up a report. If they find issues that need to be repaired, well, then they consider that in their value conclusion. And the home inspector is there for your benefit. They're there to inspect any problems, pre-existing problems, potential problems, or just advise you on any issues that they feel you should be made aware of, and that's to your benefit. Thank you.
Here's a question for Horacio. What are the usual foundation defects of concern?
The most common foundation defects that I typically run into, it's foundation cracks. You could either have minor or major foundation cracks. A major foundation crack is typically when you're starting to see some vertical or horizontal separation of more than 1/4 of an inch. Also, on raised foundations, you could typically have the structure, meaning the house, not bolted to the foundation. Some of the foundation could also be made out of clay, typically on older homes that are more than 100 years of age. With those, could be a major defect. Sometimes they would have to raise the structure and rebuild the entire foundation when that clay is very deteriorated. So most of it comes with age or cracks and not bolted.
Okay, thank you. Here comes the question to Bill. Oh, sorry. Here comes the question to Robert. I'm just testing. So I guess you're listening. Okay, here you go, Robert. What's included in the general safety inspection report for real estate transaction?
Good question. Okay, basically everything that's on the property from the ground up is what we look at, starting with the foundation, plumbing, electrical, heating and air conditioning if it has it, the roof, and then of course whatever structure we can visually inspect, whether when we crawl underneath the house or go in the basement or up in the attic. We're looking for all or any kind of a defect that we can bring to your attention that will help you be able to solidify your corrections and be able to come and have a final easy way for you to understand. So I try to put it in really easy terms for you, so I'm not going to tell you, anything structural words that are going to be hard for you to understand. So it's always going to be covering all the basics, which is everything in your home from the water shut-off and gas valve and everything to all your switches, and making sure everything's working. So that's what's covered in the inspection itself. And then one quick thing on the appraisals. Before you call the appraiser out, make sure that you have your smoke detectors in place, carbon monoxide, and also the water heater is strapped. When you do do you check for the drip pan?
Yes, always.
Okay, so, and the drip pan, make sure that drip pan's in there.
Of the water heater and the furnace itself.
Thank you. Okay, for Horacio, what's a cripple wall and why should home owners be concerned about them?
Typically, a cripple wall, it's a type of foundation where is basically a wall. The structure or the house is not resting directly into the foundation, meaning the ground. It is separated by a wall that is most of the time made out of wood. Typically, that's on older homes. When that happens on older homes, most of the time the cripple wall has experienced a lot of damage. Some of these homes are, 100 years old, 80 years old, and that structure or that cripple wall is not bolted to the foundation. Some lenders right now are starting to avoid giving money for houses that are not bolted. So it's always a concern for your inspector to find out whether a home is bolted and if that cripple wall has been reinforced.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is for Bill. Why do home inspectors recommend contractor look at the property after it has been inspected?
Okay, the reason why we would do that, when we go out to a property and we see that you may have, let's just say your roof is kind of in good condition, but there's a potential that it may end up leaking at some point. It may not be leaking at that time, but there's a potential for a leak. Or you have a heating and air conditioning, like a really old model that probably hasn't been ran for the longest time. You turn it on, it's still working, but the potential is eventually it's going to go out. It's an old unit. So in a case like that, we're not a licensed HVAC technician. We're not licensed roofers. So our job is to go out there, observe, and report our findings. And if we feel that another professional has to come in to clarify either the roof or the heating or any component of the home, then we will refer it out to those professionals. Thanks.
Okay, Robert. Here's a question. Should I have pre-inspection before selling and buy seller to gain a head start to a best offer with no negotiating points?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, the question is, should I do a pre-inspection? Should I have the seller do the inspection? I think it's a great idea. I also give you $50 off if you decide to do that, because that way, when you go to sell the home, everything's been corrected. So now when the buyer comes, they go, oh, okay, well, there's nothing wrong here. So then you can get what your asking price is, which is really cool. And it makes the house sell faster. Or you can wait for the buyer to come in and then have them do it. I think it's a little bit better to do it the other way. But we'll do whatever works the best for you. So if it doesn't work that way, we'll do it the other way. And either way, we'll get you taken care of, okay? So that's pretty important. Let me see if I had another note on that. Yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Thank you, Robert. The last round. So for Horacio, what's the difference between a is that trust system versus a conventional rafter structure construction?
Yes, it's basically the two major type of constructions that we have. It's either a truss system or a conventional rafter system. On a truss system, you have the wood members that are connected by gusset plates, which are made out of metal. On a conventional system, the connections are made with nails. So typically on newer constructions, engineers have found that metal connection make a more stable, stronger structure. So as long as none of the gusset plates or metal plates or none of the members are damaged and the entire truss acts as one member, you have a solid structure.
Thank you. Okay, Bill. Are home inspectors responsible for problems that happen after escrow closes?
Okay, I hear this one all the time because we get called, callbacks, right? Oh, yeah. Okay, this is my opinion. When I go out to a property and I inspect the property and I find either existing problems or potential problems, I always would advise the buyers and the agents to have those issues further inspected. Okay, I've made you aware of an existing problem. However, if let's just say, for instance, your buyer doesn't want to pay the extra fees for the HVAC guy or the roofer or the plumber or whatever, they don't take care of those issues, and then something happens down the line, which they do, right? We're not responsible for those problems that come up after the fact if we have advised you on those, okay? Now, let's just say, for instance, we straight out missed something, or we were in a hurry and sometimes we do a vacant house and the buyers don't even show up. And if we miss something that we know we should have caught, then we're responsible for that because it's our job to do a thorough inspection, whether the buyer's there or not, or whether the agent's there or not, and advise you of what we find. So if we intentionally miss something, I say we're responsible for it. But if we find either existing problems or potential problems that weren't addressed in the report, and then we get a call, my heater went out, the roof's leaking now. I always go back to my report to verify did I advise them properly, and if I did, and my advice wasn't taken, then no, we're not responsible for that.
One question. Do you want to?
Can I add something to that? Let's not forget that it's a visual inspection. I mean, we're not allowed to be moving personal belongings. I got a call one time. It's like, well, if he would have moved the refrigerator, he would have noticed there was something behind it. We're not supposed to be doing that sort of thing. I mean, we do our best to at least move some minor items here and there to try to look for those areas that are not easily accessible. Our company also offers errors and omissions insurance that if there's something that we blatantly miss that any other inspector could have caught, then our company will cover those issues. Obviously, the company does take care of all of that, and all those calls are directed to our office. But we also offer error and omissions insurance.
Thank you. Here's for Robert. What is your ideal scenario for your client and agent inspection synopsis?
Okay, first of all houses have something wrong with them, okay? And there's not a perfect house out there. I wish there was. If there was, we'd probably sell them all right away. But anyways, just pretty much just going over all those items that we talked about. At the end, I usually take a few minutes to explain or walk through or take you around and show you these items that we discovered, because it's just, usually they're fairly minor items. There's nothing usually serious, but most houses have something, even the brand new ones. So we just want to just take care of all those little items. Again, the most important part to me is the time you're spending with your client, taking from house to house to house or building to building. And then you invite me to come in there to be with you. I'm going to just make sure I keep everything really simple for your client to understand and share everything with you that you need to know. So I'm not going to go into any kind of details and explain to you how to build your house. This kind of lumber, or this wall's crooked, and this is that, or this is that. So I'm going to pretty much just go over real basic information and tell you exactly what you need to know, and it's pretty simple. So, like I say, the most important thing is dealing with your client and with you to make sure everybody has a happy closing on their finish for their escrow.
Thank you, Robert. So now we're going to open Q&A. So anyone has any questions? No?
We covered everything.
Not one? No questions? Oh, okay.
So usually, how long it takes for the inspection?
Okay, I'll take that one
Okay.
first.
Yeah,
Uh,
go on it.
Typical, yeah, it really depends on the size of the house. On average, it's usually about 2 hours. Okay, like my company, I work with my son, so we're pretty thorough. He does the inside while I'm doing the outside, so it may be a little shorter, but it depends also on the size of the home and the problems we find.
Okay.
Sometimes you find a clean house, you're in and out. Other times you may be there for a while.
Okay.
That sounds about right. My typical time is either an hour and a half to 2.5 hours. So yes, it does depend whether you have a raised foundation or a slab foundation. Obviously, if it's a raised foundation, we have to go down there, take a look at the foundation, plumbing, there's sometimes electrical work down there. And if there's excessive damage, obviously it's going to take us a little bit longer to crawl around the entire house.
Okay, I agree. It's an hour and a half to 2 hours for most houses. Condos are about an hour to 45 minutes, so they go pretty fast.
Thank you. So, okay, we have a question from Frankie.
Do you try under the foundation to check the bolting of the property, the house?
We check, when we go into the house, we check for bolting of the foundation and sealing. Yes, always, if there's a crawl space, we're crawling.
Yes, we always do. I always take that into account, typically because obviously the homeowner wants to know. Like I said, some lenders are starting to shy away from homes that are not bolted, and it's also part of the documents that you need to sign for your insurance. So I always make sure I go down there, take pictures of all the bolting that I noticed, and make a note in my reports.
Yeah, we have it's called soft retrofitting. Most of it's going to apply to houses with no anchor bolts. So like I've seen a variety of homes like him. I've seen two-story homes here in South Pasadena sitting on flat rocks, stacked, two-story, and then the wood was sitting right on top with no anchor bolts. But we always recommend retrofitting if there are no anchor bolts. Okay, so if you have the little short walls that we were talking about earlier that sit on top of the concrete, and the house sits on top of that, most of those homes are going to require retrofitting because those are all back in your late 40s. And even going into the 50s, some of them have anchor bolts, some of them don't, or you might just see a couple of anchor bolts. They're really not enough, but we want to make sure that the house is secured because today with the problems they're having is the insurance companies are changing the rules a little bit, and for some of the insurance people that know about these retrofitting rules, has something to do with your insurance premiums and how much you're paying. So it's always worth to check with your insurance person when it comes to a home that's required. Is it worth it to bolt it down? Yes. Is it going to be valuable in the future? Yes, it's well worth the value to bolt down its homes because it's still a great home. They're still in good conditions. In fact, most of them that aren't bolted down haven't moved much either, which is really kind of interesting. So anyways, don't, just because it doesn't have a bolt in it, don't think that it's not a good house. It's still a good house. It's just, it needs a little bit more work to bring it up to par.
Okay, we're going to take one more question. Okay, Dave.
Actually, I have two questions. One and a half.
Just make it one. No, we are running out of time.
What's the difference? Okay, if the property has a raised foundation, how do you check underneath the foundation? How do you get through the clog or if you're too big?
You have someone push you.
The half question is,
Make sure you hire a small inspector.
Was that the half question or the full question?
Was that the half question? I do, yes. I go into the crawl space all the time.
and the half question is, what's the difference between residential and commercial inspection.
Residential inspections are in a residential area. Commercial buildings have a little bit different inspection, and so we're not going to take an hour and a half. I guess we can, hour and a half, okay? We'll go through most of it. Okay, so when it comes to commercial, we have things like handicap, there's fire extinguisher requirements, they have door openings all have to be 36-inch and bigger. They have to be self-closing, and they have to be able to go back and forth. I mean, there's all sorts of things that you have to have. And if you want to hear the rest of it, then we'll have to come to another meeting, okay? But the difference between the two is commercial is usually a little bit larger for the most part, okay? And includes a lot of products or some type of other goods. So you have a large warehouse type thing, or you have a gas station, you have a dry cleaners, a strip mall, versus a home. Now, some of the homes are actually as big as some of the strip malls that we have out here in the San Gabriel Valley. So you come into a $3, $4, $5 million house, it's almost like doing a commercial job because there's so much to look at, and the systems are pretty sophisticated now with the computerized systems that operate your whole house. So the lights turn off and on, the jacuzzi, everything's going on. So, and some of the more modern homes. So, as far as the difference, and now they also have that in commercial buildings, like Home Depot has their own nursery, and it keeps it temperature controlled. It's all done by computers and a whole electronics and turning on, and security services and systems that are in place. So yes, it does get a lot more complicated, but it's pretty much the same thing. Just, you know, residential smaller, commercial is usually a little bit larger and has more things involved.
Can I add a little bit to that? In addition to what Robert said on a commercial inspection, we focus a lot on liability. Basically, the owner will have this building rented, so you're going to have tenants and you're going to have buyers, you know, customers coming in. So we take a look at a lot of that liability items. You know, if there's tripping hazards, if there's railing that are not per standards, that sort of thing. I think it's more from a liability perspective that we take a look at a commercial inspection.
Okay.
And one more thing. There's new rules for energy efficiency. Any buildings over 10,000 square feet technically are supposed to have an energy audit. So that means any kind of a building. It doesn't have to necessarily be a residential or apartment building, but anything over 10,000 square feet. Just so you're aware of it. Do you have to do it? I've been on jobs where people don't want to do it, so I just didn't do it. I just did the inspection, but even though it's a requirement. So if it comes back and anybody says anything, well, all I can do is just mention it to you and tell you and go from there.
Okay. Well, thank you, Horacio, Bill, and Robert, spending your precious time this morning and giving us your wealth of knowledge. They did an awesome job. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you so much.